comrades, welcome to Friday. I'm filming this on Sunday. I'm really sorry, but the last couple of days I have been very tired at night. I need to do something about how I vlog and how I structure my use of time during the day. But in any case, today's vlog is going to be about philosophy. Tomorrow's should be about philosophy. And Sunday's vlog should be a little bit more about going out and doing things. And maybe summing up what I learnt in the last few days. So on Friday, I read a big important text by Marx, and the reason why I've been reading all of these texts of early Marx is that I really wanted to take down this guy or denounce this guy called Tietz. And after I discussed it a little bit with my comrades, I decided I wouldn't do it, but I think all of this reading of early Marx that I've been doing has been really important for teaching me more dialectics and showing me that there is a kind of coherent Marxist concept of the state if you read Marx carefully and understand what he's getting at. So this is very annoying. I think my dog is deciding to play with the blinds, but we'll push through. So the text that I want to talk about today, that is from Marx's early period, is one that was written in 1843. I think it was written in the middle of the year. The one that I discussed in tomorrow's vlog will be about one that was written between 1843 and 1844, so towards the end of 1843. The text I want to discuss today is Critique of Hegel's Doctrine of State. And there's a special piece of text that comes a little bit later that's an intro to this text. It's called Introduction to Criticism of Hegel's Philosophy of Right. So whether it's translated as Doctrine of State or Philosophy of Right is it's not really that important, but it is definitely on Hegel's Philosophy of Right. And so Marx first develops his critique of the separation between civil society and the state in this text, and he draws it out by considering the way that Hegel inverts the ontology of political science versus the theory of political science. And so Marx, in the first part of the Critique of Doctrine of State, basically repeats himself over and over again, and he says that Hegel is confusing the subject for the predicate and the predicate for the subject. And this is all of a criticism that he's basically taken completely from Feuerbach, Ludwig Feuerbach, because he was very enamored with this philosopher at this particular time. And so what does this mean? It means that Hegel has derived this very complete and very coherent system of logic called the science of logic, or it's the logic of the absolute idea. And the idea is a special logical relation that structures all of reality, all of the universe. And I actually turned to this idea a little bit in my thesis towards the end, but a definitely more Feuerbachian version. But Hegel deduces, sorry, I've been listening to a lot of American people on YouTube lately, so my pronunciation is moving from an Australian one to more of an American one. But he deduces a perfect state that just so happens to be the Prussian constitutional monarchical state, where the legislature is run by the landed gentry, the Junker class. So it turns out that the perfect state that could possibly ever exist is one that is perfectly consonant with Hegel's special science of logic. And so there's been a lot of discussion about how Hegel could prove logically how the Prussian state was the perfect state, the one the one that is literally the embodiment of God on earth. People thought that maybe Hegel was sucking up to his masters who had given him a professorship in Berlin. And some people like Gillian Rose actually say that Gillian Rose wrote in 1981 this book called Hegel Contra Sociology, where she argues that Hegel is actually performing an immanent critique of the Prussian state and isn't actually raising it up to the level of God or trying to sing its praises or try and prove that it is the perfect state. He's actually critiquing it, which I think I have some sympathy for, but after reading early Marx, it seems very difficult to come to that conclusion, because Marx is very much of the idea that Hegel's philosophy of right is about eternalizing or somehow making into God the Prussian state, which was very oppressive and very authoritarian and non-democratic. So Hegel flips everything around. He says that the thing that comes first is the absolute idea, the special logical construction that he came up with, and what comes after is some sort of necessary materialization of this idea. And in order for the idea to become real or become perfect at the end of the day, my dog is very active at the moment. It seems like my dog is always very active whenever I vlog. But in order for the idea to become perfect, it has to go into material reality and then rise out of material reality again and rediscover itself. And so Marx is saying you've got it completely back to front. In order to understand political science, you have to understand the special conceptual relations that exist in empirical matter, and then look at those contradictions and build them into a broader system to understand what the empirical data tells you, as opposed to foisting a big rationalist conception of some spiritual, logical idea onto reality to try and see if reality matches up to it. So ultimately, the big stage, the big showdown, or the big shit fight that happens in Critique of Hegel's Doctrine of State happens when Marx discusses the legislature. And this is where Marx says that the legislature is meant to mediate between the crown and the bureaucracy and the and another element at the end. So there's three elements. So what's meant to mediate between the bureaucracy and the crown is the legislature. The legislature is meant to give the bureaucracy the supposed universal class its content. It's meant to mediate between these two forms of authoritarian power. And so the estates are these special medieval corporations that used to represent different classes in society, and Hegel reserves a place for these estates in the legislature, in his perfect legislature, which also happens to be the Prussian state. And he says that these estates are meant to give the special mediation between pure citizen type relationships and dirty empirical type relationships. And so Marx actually says none of these mediations actually happen because we're making them necessary, or we're being very vulgar materialists when we're just trying to search throughout the earth for something that will mediate between the crown and the bureaucracy. And so this is Marx's big critique. He says that ultimately the estates can't mediate because they're not part of our time. They're not a modern construction, and basically the modern conception of the citizen is one that is very contradictory, one that is split down the middle, one that is perfect and citizen-like and communal on one side, very abstract, and one that is full of content, one that is full of in a Hobbesian state of nature where everyone is fighting against everyone else. So the estates can't do this because they're not part of our time, they're part of the medieval time. But not only that, but Hegel reveals a very interesting truth about what is really meant to be mediating, or what the state really represents in a liberal democracy or in a bourgeois state. And Hegel says the most suitable class for being part of a legislature and giving deputies to the legislature is the landed gentry, who are attached to their property by the law of primogeniture. A primogeniture is where you are an accident of your property. You're not the subject of the property is the subject. The property gets passed down through the eldest son in every family. And because of this reason, being in the legislature is like a noble sacrifice, Hegel says. And really, the independence of the landed gentry from any kind of public property enables them to be supposedly independent in crafting legislation. But Marx says, here's the real kicker. It's private property acting on its own through the legislature. It's private property in its almost most perfect state. This private property which can only be alienated under certain circumstances. It's not a piece of property that is an accident of a person, and a person is literally the accident of the private property. They're the contingent thing that passes down, but the property always stays intact in the end. See if my dog will come into focus in the camera here. So this is a really important text for Marxists because it's one of Marx's earliest attempts at dealing with the state. Although he never talks about a revolutionary class, he never talks about the working class. It's a very important piece of theory that all Marxists should read and make sure they understand, because I think it does form a key plank in the Marxist conception of the state. Right, comrades, I'll see you tomorrow.